Okay, so today I thought I'd take a look at Slackware 14.1. That's the most recent release as of the time of recording. So I've spent a couple of weeks using Slackware as my daily driver, both on my netbook and my desktop. So I think I've gotten to know the distribution fairly well because there's not a lot of crazy things going on under the hood with it. It's a fairly straightforward distribution. So I made a list of pros and cons, or, well, very subjectively, pros and cons. So these are the reasons that I like Slackware and the reasons that I wouldn't use Slackware as my daily distribution. So for the pros, Slackware is very community driven. So Slackware has a very small development team of, it's a few people really. There's no big companies like with, Ubuntu or Fedora or whatever popular distribution you like. There's no big company behind it calling the shots. So most of what you're going to be using is community packages with Slack builds or things like that, or community tools like SPO package or Slapkit or whatever. So it's very, very community driven. That's definitely a plus in my book. So another pro for Slackware is that it's very minimalist. So Slackware does not get in your way a lot. There's very little things that you can't get accomplished with Slackware, which actually leads into the next point. But there's no crazy things going on, and Slackware doesn't really mess with a lot of the packages that it gets. So a lot of what Slackware actually is, what you would consider Slackware, is a lot of shell scripts. So there's no complex things going on under the hood. So that's something that I definitely like as an Arch user. I respect that because if you look at something like SUSE where it just wants to do everything for you, I just see that as the distribution getting in my way. So that kind of leads into the next point. It's very configurable. So Slackware does not, say Ubuntu or even Fedora to a certain extent, I would say, SUSE definitely, or OpenSUSE, whatever. They have a certain idea of how they want the Linux distribution to be. So, you can mess around with it if you want to, but there's no Slackware. It's different from Slackware because Slackware lets you build the distribution into what you want it to be, and it's very moldable. So Slackware is used as the base for a lot of Linux distributions. Actually, I think SUSE originally used Slackware as a base, but anyway. Slackware is also very straightforward to maintain. There's no complex package manager or anything like that. It's very traditional. It uses tarballs. It doesn't even use there is RPMs, but I don't think those are very good to use in Slackware. And mostly, if you're going to use RPMs, you would convert it to a tarball first and then install it that way. But as long as you've been around Linux for some time at least, it's very straightforward. There's no crazy things going on underneath that'll throw you off from maintaining the machine. And also, Slackware has very vanilla packages. So when you use a package in Slackware, it's very much like you downloaded it yourself, built it, and installed it. So the developers really don't mess with packages, and they don't change the source very much. From what I can tell, most of the packages that I've seen are fairly upstream. And I didn't put this on the list, but Slackware is very, very stable. It's not a bleeding edge distribution at all. So that can be a pro or a con for you depending on what you're looking for in a distribution. But Slackware is not going to fail on you. I would put it up there with Debian, in my opinion, from what I've seen at least. Slackware it's never given me any issues with stability. So say if you're using something like Arch, you know, you'll understand how frustrating it is when updates break your system, but that's not going to happen on Slackware. So anyway, on to what I would consider cons. This is obviously very subjective, so it's a few steps behind other distributions, and what I mean by that is Slackware is very conservative. So it's a very Unix-like Linux distribution in that there's no systemd, there's no a lot of I don't think it supports GNOME anymore. It dropped GNOME support quite a while back, but it seems whenever new innovations come out, Slackware is one of the last distributions to adopt it, which, I mean, that could be a pro for you. If conservatism is definitely a very attractive thing to a lot of people when they're picking a distribution, but I tend to like to be more on the bleeding edge side of things, so something like Arch's system of managing packages and being up to date, extremely so, is probably better suited for me. But if stability is your main concern rather than having the newest packages, then definitely looking at Slackware because it's very stable and conservative. Your workstation will not be changing very much. So, all right, now package management is very painful out of the box, and what I mean by that is it's straightforward, yes, but if you want some software that isn't included with the DVD, you have to go and build it yourself out of the box. So there's no repos or anything like that. Well, there is a repository, but it's mainly used for upgrading packages that came with the install disk. So contrast that to something like Debian, where you have an essentially infinite number of packages available to you. Slackware has a set number of packages, and it focuses on upgrading those. And I mean, if you want something outside of that, your best bet will probably go to slackbuilds.org. So they're definitely tools that help with this. So SBO package is one of them, and it's like the whole system with SBO package and Slackbuilds is actually very similar to the AUR. So it works basically the same way. The community sets up a package, and they maintain packages on slackbuilds.org. And SBO package actually lets you build a queue of packages that you want, and then you can build them and install them in order. So it's obviously a very powerful tool to have, and it lets you upgrade them as well, I believe. So SBO package is pretty much essential as far as I'm concerned. It's kind of like Yaourt with Arch, where, I mean, if you want to use Slackbuilds without SBO packages, it's a very painful process because you're hunting down dependencies and things like that, and it's very, very time consuming. And out of the box, it's maintaining Slackware is a nightmare if you want any software that's not included. So that's, I mean, you could see that as a con. I just think that, I mean, part of it is design choice, I think, but there's definitely applications to get around that. So, Slack to get is a very popular one. I use SBO package because most of the software that I need is on Slack builds. And there's another one, Slack Package Plus, that actually lets you add external repos to the Slack package manager. So if you want to use Alien Bob's repository or the multilib or anything like that. So that actually leads into another con for me is Slack build does not have multilib support out of the box. So if you're running on a 64-bit environment, you're not going to be able to run 32-bit applications out of the box. Now, Alien Bob does keep a repo of 32-bit libraries and GCC and glibc multilib. So, I mean, you can get multilib. I just feel like that should be a feature that should be included, I mean, with every distribution out of the box. And I don't know, it just seems a bit silly to me to have to use a third-party repo to get something as basic as multilib. So, those are my reasons that I do very much like Slackware, and I can't see myself moving to it because it's just not for me. I don't think that I'm the target audience for Slackware, but I can definitely see the appeal to a distribution like this. And if anything I said interests you, you should definitely look into it because it's very well put together, and it does what it does, what it's designed to do very, very well. It just so happens that what it's designed to do is not what's right for me. So, anyway, thanks for watching.